Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Acts of the Apostles. We're in Acts chapter 27. Paul is ready to begin the voyage to Rome. You recall, of course, that he has spent 2 years in Caesarea in Roman custody. During that time, he has had 4 different trials or hearings. The first one was in Jerusalem, right after he was taken by the Roman centurion there. He appeared before the Sanhedrin. A riot ensued, so they sent Paul to Caesarea. He appeared before the governor Felix. Felix understood quite well that Paul was innocent. That's clear. But Felix was trying to curry favor with his Jewish subjects, so he kept him in prison for 2 years until a new governor comes by the name of Festus. When Festus heard the case of Paul, he didn't really understand the issues, but he was going to take Paul back to Jerusalem for trial. Paul was not willing to do that, so Paul appealed to Caesar. And then there was a 4th hearing, and that was before King Herod Agrippa. This was not really a trial so much as it's just that Festus needed help in writing the report and asked Agrippa to hear Paul himself. So Paul has had 4 hearings before the Sanhedrin, before Felix, before Festus, and before Agrippa. But now he has been sent to Rome because he has appealed his case to the emperor. Notice that the chapter number 27 starts. Now it was decided that we would sail for Italy. Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to the centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We boarded a ship about to sail for ports along the west coast of the province of Asia. Paul is handed over to a Roman centurion, a fellow by the name of Julius. We're told he belonged to the imperial regiment. Now what that means is that he was detached from regular military service, and he was serving as part of the official administrative couriers. That is, he would carry messages for the empire to Rome and from Rome to the provinces. So he's presently in Caesarea, and so Governor Festus recruits him to escort Paul back to Rome, to the emperor, to stand trial there. Notice also it says that we set sail, indicating that Luke is part of the traveling company. He is allowed to go with Paul to attend him as a servant, as a helper. Now we know, of course, that Luke had come with Paul to Jerusalem 2 years earlier. And so we know from this passage that he had stayed in Caesarea all the time that Paul was in prison, attending to Paul's needs and taking care of, as he could, whatever Paul needed during his imprisonment. Now, the one more interesting thing about this, we know, of course, that Luke is the author of Acts, but Luke is also the author of the Gospel of Luke. Now, we know from Luke's Gospel, he begins it by saying what he tells about Jesus was based on eyewitness accounts. He had talked to the eyewitnesses. Well, more than likely, during the 2 years that Paul was in prison in Caesarea, Luke used that time to talk to those who had known Jesus, who had seen his ministry. In other words, he collected the evidence in those 2 years that he would use then to write the Gospel of Luke that we know and love so well. But anyway, Luke is with Paul now as they set out on this sea voyage to Rome for Paul's trial before the emperor. Now, there's one more thing I should say. You may wonder why Paul had appealed to the emperor when the emperor was Nero. Everything we know about Nero was so evil and so vicious and so violent in his persecution of the Christians. Why would Paul appeal to go and stand trial before Nero? Remember, at this time, those things about Nero were not yet known. This is the year AD 59. Nero has been the emperor now for about 5 years, but he has not shown his despicable character yet. Interestingly enough, during Nero's first few years as the emperor, he was advised by Seneca, the philosopher. Now, Seneca had been Nero's tutor when he was a young man, and he continued to advise Nero when he became emperor. Seneca was a good man, and his advice was good. Also advising Nero in those first few years was a fellow by the name of Burrus, who was the chief of the Praetorian Guard. Burrus was an honorable man, an honest man. And so in the first few years of Nero's reign as emperor, being advised by Seneca and by Burrus, it almost was like a golden age for Rome. The administration was good. There was nothing wrong with it. Everything looked good. Now, in a couple of years, Nero's going to get tired of Seneca and Burrus and get tired of their instruction to him, and he's going to free himself from their influence. And when he begins to rule on his own, then his evil nature comes through. But that will not yet be seen for a couple more years. So no one suspects yet what Nero is really like, because in these first few years it's been pretty good. So Paul has no reason to fear appealing to the Roman emperor, even though it's Nero, because Nero's evil nature has not yet been disposed. So anyway, Paul is on the way to Rome. Julius, the Roman centurion, is taking him. They arrange sea voyage. It says they coast along Asia Minor, which of course is Turkey. If you read chapter 27, Luke gives a very detailed account of their voyage, how they sail past Cyprus, how they make their way to Crete, and when they get to Crete, they try to decide whether to stay there or to winter there, or to go on to Rome or to winter in Crete. In verse 9 it says, "We'd lost a lot of time on our voyage so far. Sailing had already become dangerous because it was after the fast." Now when Luke says the fast, he means the Day of Atonement, probably in late September. Now in Roman times, sailing became dangerous after September. From September to November, you could still sail, but it was dangerous. After November, you couldn't sail at all. So they were discussing, now that it's past September, probably early October, whether they should winter in Crete or whether they should try to make it on to Rome. They decide they're not going to make it to Rome, but they can get a little bit further along. There's another harbor a few miles away, and they try to make it to that. There's another harbor in Crete that faces both southwest and northwest, and so the owners of the ship said, let's try to sail for there. I think we can make it there, and we'll winter there. Unfortunately, that's going to lead to disaster. It's going to lead to shipwreck. But we'll see that in our next session together. But anyway, Paul is now on the way to Rome. It's the year AD 59. It's the fall. And he's going to Rome to stand trial, as he thinks, before Nero, the emperor. In our next session together, we'll look at how the sea voyage ends in a disaster, a shipwreck, and what comes of that. But that'll be next time. I hope you have a great day today, and I'll see you in our next session together in our 5-minute study in the Acts of the Apostles.